Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I have created this. This is a chess queen that's made out of purple heart wood. And now this is going to be given as a gift to someone. Now let me show you who that is. Well, this is a chess piece, and the most popular chess YouTuber on the planet is GothamChess. Levy Rozman. As we can see here, he has 1.68 million subscribers. He also has 2 other channels as well. He is very successful in the community of chess, helping build it, helping people learn how to play better. Now, what I wanted to do was I wanted to make something for him because recently, actually, he just got married. He got married to Lucy, and so I wanted to get him a gift. Part of the reason as well is because apparently he accepts gifts.
Did you know that I accept fan mail? I have a P.O. box in the description if you want to send little things. But I just want to shout out Harley, who built this.
All right, and apparently he accepts big things. And so someone made him a king? Well, here, Levy, here is your queen. Now, this wouldn't be complete, of course, without the attachable logo, which is Batwoman instead of Batman. And so there we go. Now I'm going to be sending this to you. So I want you to look out in your P.O. box. So you can have it free and clear. And I don't care if you put it in the desk behind you. But, you do what you want with it. It's for you. It's for Lucy. You guys enjoy. But what I'd like to do is now explain how I made it. We're going to watch a video. I'm going to commentate alongside it. And you all hopefully can enjoy and just watch the creative process. And like Levy always tries to do, I'm going to attempt to do all this in one take. So we'll see what happens here. All right, so first, actually, before we get started, I wanted to show what it started. It started as literally a piece of single wood. This is not even 1 inch thick. It's a 15/16 inch thick long piece of wood. I had to layer them because the piece was going to be about 7 inches in diameter. So that's what it started with. And let's take a look here. So I had to cut the pieces to make sure that, of course, we were going to make and build up that layer. And then I made a circle here so I can make sure that when I cut it, everything was going to fit properly. So it has to be all glued together. Now, I don't have clamps that were big enough in order to clamp the entire thing together. It actually ended up being a little over 8 inches, almost 9, because I needed to make sure I had definitely enough. So here I'm clamping everything, and a lot of woodworkers will tell you that you can never have enough clamps. And that absolutely is the case, because I really wish I would have had more, but I didn't. So here I'm gluing the entire big, large section, and that was pretty simple. And again, then clamping it. And what I really realized was my lathe that I have can only make a piece that's about 7 and maybe a half inches in diameter, but this block was going to end up actually being about 8.5 inches from corner to corner. So I was going to have to basically make it more of a cylinder in order for it to be able to fit on my lathe. So you'll see me adjusting that in a second. But so now I had to take the large block that was in the middle and then the 2 edge pieces, and then I had to glue those together to make sure, of course, they can become one cohesive unit. So this is where I did that, clamped all that together. And I mean, this thing was definitely getting really, really big and heavy. As you can see, I marked too the pieces to make sure that all the wood grain was together. When I cut the pieces, I wanted to keep them together so it would look as good as possible.
That's big.
Yeah, it was very, very heavy and a lot to work with. So I wanted to install it onto my lathe using this chuck here, where I could take this very, very solid circular piece and then screw into it, because when it's spinning and rotating on the lathe, you don't want it to fly off and hit you. It can become very, very dangerous. So I screwed it all in. It was secure. So then I took my circular saw and I started making it a cylinder on the edge, because again, you see it was too wide where the edges were. I needed to make it where it was closer to the 7 inches in diameter in order for it to fit on my lathe and to be able to turn it. So now, for the first time, I stick it on my lathe, and as you can see there, the bottom, it barely fits. That's why I had to, of course, make it a cylinder, apart from it just being a good idea. And you'll see what the problem is and the adjustments I had to make, because this was the first time sticking it on. I was kind of hoping that I'd be able to turn it on and start cutting. But here we go. This is the first time I turned it on. Yeah, and it was jumping all over the place. So definitely a huge, huge problem. And I had to really, really think about what to do. So I went back. I made the other side more circular. And then I wanted to cut lengthways and try to cut those corners off all the way down the edge. At first I used a Sawzall. The Sawzall was very, very slow. It was not very ideal at all. So then I used this saw. I didn't film that, but I cut all those pieces. I screwed the lathe back down to make sure that it would just be a little bit more secure. And you see, now it's more of a cylinder, but it does still shake a lot. So I had to just very slowly cut. If you observe, this is speed 100, but my fingers down there on and off, on and off, on and off to make sure it never goes too fast, because I need it to, cut it without it flying off. But since the whole thing was shaking, it made it very difficult to have even cuts, because as the machine shakes back and forth, well, so was my tool. So I wasn't able to, actually get a full cylinder. I'll explain how I fix it in a second. There's an actual size cutout I made. But if you look here, you see how you can see it's shaking. It's going up, down, up, down, up, down. So I had to really slow down. I even used a sander to try to sand out the big, fatter part. And then what I did here was just almost by hand, cut just the spots that were bigger. And it was a very, very, very tedious process. But finally I got it down to a perfectly circle cylinder. Now I had cut out this board here as well to make a little bit of a mold, so I knew the sizes and where everything should be cut. It made it a lot easier throughout the project. This right here is a tool designed to sharpen my tungsten carbide cutting tools. So it's really easy, and the tungsten carbide tools last a long, long time. So that was kind of nice and convenient throughout the project. But this is actually at 99 speed. So this took a very, very, very long time. It was very tedious. I made sure to have the speed as slow as my lathe could go, because I didn't want to damage anything. I didn't want it to be too fast where, stuff would come off or possibly fling or fly or just have really, really bad issues. So I definitely made sure to have it slow. Now, as this started taking shape, it just became much more and more enjoyable, because at first it was, didn't barely look like anything. Those tools down there are actually called a caliper. And so that's a tool that you can use to, measure how thick you're going to have something. So again, I used my that piece of plastic where I cut out the chess piece, and then I used the calipers fairly often as well to make sure that the widths were about what they needed to be. And again, it wasn't exactly a science per se, but I did, find a piece I liked, cut it out, and then most of the cuts I made were a little bigger than they needed to be, just in case I had to go back and trim some more if I made some sort of mistake. Now, what's sort of interesting, and perhaps I can show these later, or you'll see them. There are some mistakes that were made, and a couple of them I left when I went to a popular woodworking store here. Again, being an amateur woodworker, I was asking some questions, and they said, why not just leave it? It just shows it was handmade. And yeah, that makes sense. Gives a little bit of character, the imperfections. It's like us humans. We're all imperfect, so it doesn't look like possibly it just came off a machine. Obviously, this was a handcrafted piece of art. So now I start sanding. The sanding was probably about the longest of all the processes. I went even down to 40 grit sandpaper to get some of the deep cuts and the deep lines out, and then worked my way up. In this shot, I was to 60 to 120. Probably was sanding to about 220 or so, I believe, in these steps. Now I want you to observe as well, if you see the coloring, you see how the color on the left is almost brownish, and then on the right it's still purple. Well, that's what's interesting about Purple Heart. As you cut into the wood, it actually starts turning brown and not the pretty purple color. So what you have to do is give it some time, set it out in the sun, let the air hit it, and then eventually it restores and the purple color comes back. So you see, as I add some water to this, the big difference in color. We'll go full screen there. You can see the difference. It's really interesting. So then I'm going to sand the other side, and you can see it was a little bit later, but what you'll see is that it's actually a little brown there, but even in just the about 40 minutes or so of me sanding the right side of this piece, it then starts turning purple on the left again, and it swaps as I wet it. You'll see the difference. A part of the reason that I wet the piece is because after you sand, when you wet the piece, then little hairs will stick up. Because as you sand, sometimes the wood grains will just kind of smash into it. And when you put water, they stick up some, and then you can sand it again, and you get those. So you get an even smoother sand. So I definitely tried to take sanding about as serious as I could, because sanding can really make or break, make it feel really nice, and make it look good. So again, you see the color here, the difference, the purple on the left, and now it's brownish on the right. So right here is where I made a huge error that ended up not being too big of a deal, but here it comes. I was working on this, and my tool jumped, and it put this big hit right here. So I debated about it, but then I decided, you know what, I just have to just cut that down. So I trimmed that down, and then I eventually, at that point, went ahead and I put the little grooves for her head in there. So that was something that I wasn't going to do originally, because I had to do it by hand, and I thought it might not have turned out so great, but I was pretty happy with how it turned out. It didn't look too bad at all, so I was pretty happy with that. And then, of course, doing a lot of sanding. I just wanted to pause here. It's pretty interesting. You see just the huge difference in the color, the purple and then the brownish. But in the finished piece, that doesn't exist at all, because just a little bit of the sun, the UV, the oxidation, and it just turns purple again, which is pretty awesome. So here I use some walrus oil, which is a really nice finish. This penetrates deep into the wood to help protect it, help bring out its natural colors as well. And then this is where I started with some sanding, some nice sanding to really bring out the shine. As you sand higher and higher, it starts getting a mirror-like finish without any kind of products. So I know I personally enjoy sanding things really high. This piece is designed to just sit on a shelf. It's not going to be used and eaten off of, so it can just have some oil. Now here's where, of course, I'm working on the bat symbol. First, I cut this piece out with this hand saw, and the results were less than ideal. I tried my best with my hand to fix it, but it was just too thick in some spots and not another. So I actually went and bought a bandsaw, and I used that to cut this, and it did a much better job of making a piece that actually looked good. So I worked real long to sand this thing as well. Again, sanding was tedious, and then I oiled it up, and then after a day or two I actually hand sanded it all the way up to the same thing that I sanded this to. So here we're about to see how shiny this can get, and then there's a comparison. So it starts at 3,000 is where I was, and I sand this all the way up to 12,000 grit. So you'll see a second the difference you could pause the video, but I think real quick I'll even just pause. But the top there's 3,000 grit, and the top or the bottom there is 12,000 grit. So yeah, it looks even shinier, you know, with the higher grit. So then I took the piece. I had to, you know, make the top circle and smooth it out, sand it up, and hand sand that too, all the way up to 12,000. I drilled out the hole for the magnet, which of course you see working. And yep, I put it back on the lathe in order to work on sanding that so it would look good. And yeah, it was a lot of fun sanding, getting everything to look pretty. Then of course put the hole in the bat, and then I was able to take the chuck off. And then on the bottom, sanded that off, and I decided to use this really nice foam stuff that actually is just really pleasing. Won't damage any furniture that it's put on. And then I used a spray adhesive that I put on it, both sides, and then put that on. And then I actually sanded the edges of that just so, you know, it's just even that much more smooth as far as the transition goes. So that's basically the process that went into making this right here. I said I'd show some of the imperfections. Well, one of the things was if you look, you can kind of see some of the glue lines. And then it's really only on one side where it's kind of bad, but it's because I didn't, I think, clamp quite hard enough in, you know, parts of it. And those glue lines are visible. Now, that doesn't mean the piece is going to fall apart, but it's there. And then if you look up here, you see there's some little gouges that were cut out. But again, you know, when I heard it gives it character, it makes a little sense. So I thought I'd leave it. I didn't sign this piece. I don't have any kind of insignia. It's just a piece that, you know, do what you will with it. And that's that. Now, I want to conclude by saying, you know, I enjoy making things for people. And if for some reason people enjoy watching this video, this concept, I would definitely be willing to look for someone else out there in the community who does something, maybe a smaller, large creator, you know, and make them something. Do something for them that they would enjoy, a piece that they would like. It doesn't only have to be wood. I've done things with stone, just different unique art thinking and stuff. I could film the process and then bring it to you all. If you want to see, of course, the process behind it, and then give it to that person. So I have no idea. This is the first video I've ever put on YouTube. Either it's something you enjoyed or you didn't. And if you got this far in the video, well, maybe you did enjoy it. So thank you very much. Consider subscribing. Put this at the very end. If I do come out with something else, you'll get a notification. Obviously, you won't be bothered every single day, but you know, show some support. If I get some subscriptions, then maybe I can do it again. Put in the comments somebody you would like me to make something for, and if I get multiple requests, perhaps I can fulfill it. And this can be something that I do. It's up to you guys as to whether or not this is something that's wanted. Otherwise, enjoy this one thing and have a good one.